Well, if I didn't believe in karma before, I sure do now. And so does the rest of the planet, actually. With this last distortion of reality, I was laughing too hard by the end to really feel bad for what happened. Though I was also glad the distortions are limited to this planet. When it all came out, I was actually surprised to find out that the distortions don't go past the Van Allen radiation belt. I mean, could you imagine a full invasion of those bugs we just torched? Yikes. After the distortion that woke me up, I made sure to check the girls. They had not adjusted any, so I checked the property again. Nothing. When the girls made breakfast, I got online, and there was barely any news. I thought there'd be something. I figured after a distortion, everything would be going nuts, just like it always is. This is odd. No mass transformations, no big ass ships suddenly coming out of fogs of God knows what, no mass casualty events, nothing. Eventually, the news did start to trickle in, and it first started with pictures of men actually standing over monsters they killed, taking trophy photos. Some were giant reptiles of a sort I had never seen before. It doesn't match anything I know in the fossil record. Then there were trophy pictures of aggressive giant bugs, most of which seemed to be like mantises or scorpions that honestly didn't move as fast as one would think for insects. Then I thought about it, and I guess the square cube law has its own effect no matter what. Some strange multi-headed, multi-limbed thing that seems to take a pretty heavy firepower to the face in order to stop it. And then there was even pictures of some sort of walking fish thing. I don't want to say guy because it had no junk. Yet the scary things all walked out later on two legs. From different parts of the world, whole hordes of what looked like zombies seemed to flood out from underground bunkers. It was strange. Some of them glowed, some just kind of walked normal, but they all looked like shit. These were actually not difficult to deal with, but those really big walking corpses that came later, they were a whole lot tougher to put down. These things are rather stupid, as they would simply run at the potential victim, as they wore some sort of makeshift armor and usually melee weapons of all things. It amazed me how these things would be seen on a video, roar and charge a vehicle that actually had a turret on it. I mean, what the hell happened? Maybe they thought the 50 caliber mounted on top was a camera. You know, look here, smile, wait for the flash. It didn't take long before most folks put the pieces together. Anyone inside a sealed bunker, vault, dugout, or any type of strictly underground fortification had actually changed due to that distortion. The reason we didn't feel it is because we're above ground. This was horrible for those in the hidden research areas, as they would be stuck down in there with something or some things, usually quite nasty. Thinking about what they were going through, I could only imagine it was like the back rooms. The ones that came out of those vaults that still had their senses about them were immediately treated and aided to get the survivors out. Inside those places, you couldn't get in because the heavy weapon suits were, well, far more of a hindrance than anything else. Thankfully, most of us had not forgotten our training on how to be tunnel rats. Clearing the bunkers and vaults, many found out that the transformation really depended on the personality. As seems as though the more the supposed experts look into it, it comes down to actually empathy, if nothing else, which they're still trying to figure that one out. The less empathy someone has, the less human they remain. A few with high empathy even received special psychic traits. They weren't just human, they were enhanced. We would like to know more about them, but of course the governments around the world lock those folks up for their own protection, which, as we all know, is a long way of saying bullshit. One of the blessings actually came from Asia, of all places, since a large amount of North Koreans' military, since the first distortion, were held up underground as protection. All of them had been altered in some way. Realizing this, China actually blew all the bridges and stationed an entire military on the northern part of the peninsula, trying to keep the horde of God knows what from reaching them. When the creatures that ravaged the land reached the river to the north, they didn't cross. They seemed to stop, look at it. It was strange. Instead, they just eventually turned and went south. Yet by the time this group had even turned around, the largest airborne, naval, aquatic, and air assault mission ever was being conducted in the southern half of the peninsula and pushing all the way to the 38th parallel. With all the static cameras along the line, we got to actually watch the whole thing happen live in 4K as the horde tried to cross. I say try because the first ones only got caught in so much concertina wire that many of them bled out before even reaching the mines. The old minefields were actually still active. We worried about this when we were over there, but most of us weren't stupid enough to go tap dancing in it. And these minefields turned into the greatest fireworks display as artillery fired over past the mines to the north and was vaporizing the bodies as they reached the line, slowing down them from popping all the mines. At that point, the remnants of North Korea had already been fled south, at least those that were living above land. They had run like crazy, and I can't say that I blame them. So anyone else coming across was immediately considered hostile no matter what. We weren't going to risk it, especially with zombies. Holy shit. Even as the mines began to run out, aircraft came in with such sticky fire that the ground turned into glass in some areas from the heat. This made many of the zombies actually pop like zits as they overheated, and then something inside them, especially ones that glowed, just went splat. When it seemed like they ran out of things that burned, a line of heavy bombers came in next, and they dropped so much ordnance that most of the cameras actually malfunctioned from the shockwave. The few of these, whatever the hell they were, that came from underground, faced so much lead that we actually had to reclassify them. They weren't zombies anymore. They were pencils. Unlike the so-called Battle of Yonkers, this line held, and now we can finally say it. The war is over. I was so grateful that no one close by had an underground bunker. I mean, even if they were, they'd have to be in it when the distortion came. If they actually do have one, the girls and I actually hope they never find their way out and simply starve to death down there. Since all of this happened so far away from me and the girls, I actually wonder when my luck is going to run out. Thinking about it, the last two distortions have been rather easy to deal with, rather limited in scope when you really think about it. It makes me worry about what might come in the next distortion. I mean, if we do have one. Well, usually they're several months out, so I have some time, but until then, I'm going to keep Overwatch this area. You know, just in case.